And hello everybody, another edition of Woody Screencast, where today we're continuing to learn about media bias. Why? So we can determine the credibility of sources. We are going to put all this together in the next couple of days. You'll know you've got it when you can. At this point, you should be able to define and explain bias, but now we're going to look at how to look for bias, different types of media bias. So we will have 5 different types. They are partisan bias, demographic bias, corporate bias, neutrality bias, and big story bias. Here we go. Partisan bias. Journalists' own political views affect news coverage. It could also be the news outlet, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. So for example, there is this media bias chart out there. Extreme left means more liberal, extreme right kind of means more conservative, and you can see where certain things kind of land. Not that they're not credible. Credibility's up here too, and non-credible's down here. So if you're like one of these things all the way to the left and down, or one of these things all the way to the right and down, they're going to be very biased, not credible. Get CNN skews a little more liberal, so just keep that in mind. They are still credible. So there are things that we need to look at. Demographic bias. Journalists' race, gender, ethnicity, or other factors, including their culture, cultural background, economic class, can impact their news coverage. And we talked about earlier in class blind spots. We all have them. These are some of these blind spots. You might not realize. You just have to keep them in mind. Again, we're talking about journalists, what to look for when we write things, when we talk about things, when we make up our own ideas on topics. Keep these things in mind to try to limit the amount of bias we have. Corporate bias, basically news corporations, they let their advertising, the business or advertising, impact how they tell a story, or if they even cover it. Say I'm a little small town newspaper, and my biggest advertiser pays most of my bills, is involved in some kind of scandal. I either might not cover it, or maybe I don't include all the facts. I don't want to ruin that relationship with that person. Now, that's not journalistically ethical, but it happens. Neutrality bias, bias in which the journalist or news outlet tries so hard to avoid appearing biased that they actually misrepresent things. So I know I have some bias. I'm going to try to negate that by really over-reporting the other side, and now I've left the side I tore it out. That is an issue too. Big story bias. Your perceptions, views of the event might cause you to misrepresent information. So those are 5 types. Now here's the forms of bias. Here's how these things happen. Framing, absence of fairness and balance, tone, story selection, and sourcing. So framing, it's the way you might approach or organize a story. You put all the good stuff first and the bad stuff last, or vice versa, without getting them both equally in the beginning. Not everybody reads the whole story. That can be a form of bias. Absence of fairness and balance. Accuracy, you want to get the facts correct. Fairness, be fair to the people, organizations involved in the story. Don't misrepresent what they've said or done. You also have to give the subject a chance to, the word is cut off there, but you should fill in to respond. Respond is what you need to fill in there. Tone, the words we use impact things. So the words and phrases used in the story can create a certain emotion, certain feeling for or against the topic. Our words matter. We want to use neutral tone words if we're just trying to inform. If we're trying to persuade, then you want to use evasive, negatively or positively charged words. Story selection. This is the process news stories used to decide which events or issues to cover. That could tie back to political views. Editors are human. All right, so those are, last one, sourcing. So this is, sorry about that. all the people, organizations, documents, anywhere we get information from, that's a source. If you have even this incredible source, you find a statement outlandish, completely crazy, or false, then you need to put it in context, fact check it. Go and we'll talk, I think it's tomorrow, about lateral reading. Go and check other sources, make sure that that's an accurate statement. Another thing people do is they use the same source over and over. Avoid that. We need to make sure that we are using a variety of sources. All right, so those are the main things about bias. We'll now put this into play and start working with it. So with that, Ward is out.